Welcome. Thank you for coming along to this Remind workshop called Tools for Right Now. So Charlotte and I felt really inspired to run this workshop because of the recent lockdown restrictions that have happened in New Zealand, and also in Aussie as well, people being on, my sister said yesterday, they're on day 72. And Charlotte and I have been teaching mindfulness for the last 3 years, and we've just recently rebranded and launched Remind, which has pivoted a little bit to be able to serve organizations and teams to build wellness in workplaces, as well as individuals. We're building an online course at the moment as well, which will be launching on September 7th, which people will be able to work through a 12-step mindfulness course with guided meditations and a 50-page workbook, and audio lessons as well from Charlotte and I. So today we are going to be looking at the tools that we can implement during this time of lockdown, and also beyond this. These tools apply to much more than just this time. We are going to start, hopefully people are mainly here. We're going to start by actually just dropping in with one of our first practices. So we're going to be guiding you through a practice, and then we're going to allow you to understand the science of why these practices help us, and what they're doing in our brain and what they're doing in our bodies. So that sort of gives us a little bit more context for why we want to use them and when we want to use these tools. So we'll guide you through only a few because we've only got an hour. But then after this workshop, we will send you through a PDF that has more of a comprehensive list of tools that you can use. One being hugging has actually been scientifically proven to help our well-being. So we're encouraging people to hug in lockdown. And another one being humor as well. My sister told me she was on a walk in Sydney, and day 71, surely things start getting a bit weird. But she was walking down the road, and there were these a father and a daughter, essentially just dressed as minions. And they were walking down the road, and they were like, we had nothing to do, so we decided that we were going to dress up as minions and walk around the neighborhood. And I just thought, that's what we need. We need some lighthearted humor and a little bit of play as well. So it's not all serious, and we're not just thinking about, oh no, how long are we going to be here for? So we'll start our first practice, which is called box breathing. So this is a tool, it's called box breathing because we can imagine that we're breathing, we're drawing a box with our breath. So we're going to inhale. I'm going to do 4 seconds, but you can actually in your own practice count how many seconds you want. Can be 6 seconds, could be 8 seconds if you're really good at holding your breath. But we inhale, and then we hold the breath, exhale, and then hold the breath again. So it's like we're inhaling, hold, exhaling, hold. So we're drawing a box. So we'll start. Just find a comfortable seat. You don't need to change your position in any sort of real way. We're just focusing on our breath for the next about 2 minutes. So begin by inhaling in through the nose and out through the nose, this breath. Inhaling for 4. Holding for 4. 2, 3, 4. Exhaling for 4. 2, 3, 4. Holding 4. 2, 3, 4. Inhaling. Holding. Exhaling. Holding. Inhaling. Hold. Exhale. Holding. Inhale. Holding. Exhale. I'm going to let you guide yourself now using the counting. If you want to extend the amount of time, you can as well. We want to generate on the exhale a sense of letting go. And on the inhale, you're noticing a filling up. And if you get distracted, just come back and start counting again. Inhale for 4, holding for 4, exhaling for 4, holding for 4. Do 2 more rounds in your own time. And we'll begin to open the eyes, come back into the Zoom room. So I just want to bring your attention to what may have changed for you from when we arrived in this workshop to now after doing that practice. And feel free, if you want to, throughout this workshop, to post in the chat any questions or any maybe learnings or reflections that you may have as well. So we want to notice how we may have changed and how that breathing may have helped us. And Charlotte's going to now talk to us about how and why that breathing technique helps us.
Cool. Hi, I just want to firstly say welcome to all of you. My name's Charlotte and I'm grateful to have you all here with us. I think during this time, especially when we can't connect as much, like physically, it's nice to be in a space where we can all connect together, and especially to talk about wellbeing and mental health and how to really look after ourselves. When me and Ursi thought about how we could support people during this time, our workshops normally tend to be talking a lot about the science and educating ourselves about our brain and the mind. But when we started to think about what people need right now, what we need right now are tools. It's so important right now just to look after ourselves. So we've just put together a few exercises and tools, box breathing being one. And then I'll talk a little bit about why we do these exercises and touch on the science and the science behind meditation. So that first exercise we just did is box breathing. And box breathing is a really powerful tool to help calm yourself down if you're feeling any sense of overwhelm, or if you need like a quick exercise or a quick practice to get you back into the present moment. Because box breathing and any type of deep breathing is scientifically proven to release chemicals in our brain that naturally calm ourselves down. And right now, most importantly, it calms down our survival brain. So I'm not sure if any of you have talked about or looked into your survival brain a lot, and we will touch on it throughout the session. But I guess our brain in general, our brain is undoubtedly the most complex organ in the body. So we rely on our mind for everything, and everything we see, touch, feel, taste, everything we experience is in the mind. And our mind and our brain actually was designed to survive. So going back to when we were cave people, where we hunted for food, we gathered, we lived in the wild, we needed the survival part of our brain to be really strong to look after us and keep ourselves safe. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later. But just for now, knowing that we evolved for survival, and right now, it's going to be really active. Like that survival part of our brain right now in this global pandemic is is probably going to be activated. So everything you are feeling is really valid, really normal. It is how our brain functions, and we'll talk more. And after this hour, I am try and give you a better idea of why we're feeling this like this and how we can look after ourselves. But box breathing and deep breathing are really powerful in calming ourselves down. So that's what I thought we'd start with. And now we're going to talk about why and how to meditate and do a meditation, and then talk a bit more about the science behind it and the survival brain that we have.
Cool. So one of our most important tools that Charlotte and I teach is mindfulness meditation. So meditation has in recent years been well researched, this type of meditation, to improve your well-being, essentially. And also there's been science behind it that has shown that it can change the structure of the brain, build the strength of one part of the brain, which we'll talk about later. So in this workshop, we're going to practice first, and then we'll talk to you more about it. So you may have meditated before, you may practice meditation every day, or you may have never meditated. And meditation has, or some people think that traditional meditation, you're meant to get rid of the thoughts in your head and sit peacefully and calm and still like Buddha, but that is not true. If you got rid of all the thoughts in your brain, I would be kind of worried about it. That's not the intention. So the intention is to notice that we are thinking, notice that the mind is racing or running away into the future and the past, and then we guide ourselves back to something that's happening now. So something that's happening in the present moment. And so we call these present moment things, we call them anchors. So they anchor us into this moment here. And we teach the anchors being breath, because we're always breathing if we're alive. That is something that's happening in the present moment. The other is the sensations in our bodies. So our bodies are very sensitive, and there are often feelings and sensations in the body that we go through our day and will never notice that they're there. But when we slow down, we begin to become aware of them in the present. The third one is the sounds in the habitat of the environment around us. So the sounds around us are happening right now. And you can sort of tell the difference between the sound that's happening right now and then a thought that takes you away, and it's not a sound, but you get distracted by that thought and you don't notice the sounds in the present moment, like your mind talking about something else. So essentially, we focus on an anchor, we notice if we go wandering away, and then we return back to one of the anchors. And you may find in your own practice that you'll like one anchor better than the other. Like the breath is a great anchor to use. The body sensations you might not like them so much. The sounds you might like the best. So I'm going to introduce you to each one of those anchors in this meditation. And we're basically practicing being here now in the present moment. And we're not trying to achieve anything. We're not trying to stop thinking. We're just being here. So does anyone have any questions about that before I dive into guiding you on a meditation? Cool. Let's do it. So there are formal and informal meditations, which we can talk about later when we go through the other tools. This would be classified as a formal meditation. We'd be sitting down and intentionally practicing closing our eyes. An informal meditation would be, say, we're brushing our teeth and we just decide to only focus on brushing our teeth. That can be a meditation as well. But this would be classified as a formal one. So we want to sit in a position that allows us to be alert, yet relaxed. So we don't want to be falling asleep, because we're training here. We're like, we're going to the gym essentially, but for our brain. So feeling a straight back, And we want to find a comfortable position that you don't want to wriggle around in too much. And we'll begin by closing the eyes, or if you don't want to close the eyes, you can drop the gaze low. And initially we will connect with our breath. So we're going to take 3 breaths together, in through the nose. We want to sigh out through the mouth. In through the nose. Sigh out through the mouth. Really allowing those exhales to give you a sense of letting go. Inhaling. Sighing out through the mouth. Beginning to return now to your natural breath. Allowing it to be as it is. And with every exhale, feeling the shoulders dropping down a little bit closer to the earth. Any tension in the forehead or in the micro muscles around the eyes melts, softens now. Any tension in the jaw, allowing the jaw to drop slightly open, the tongue drop off the roof of the mouth. Feeling your body settle. And you may notice straight away that the mind has wandered into thinking about something in the future or the past. This is totally normal. This is where we notice the opportunity to come back into the present moment. And we invite ourselves back to our breath. Noticing the rise and fall of the chest. Noticing the sensations in the nostrils or at the back of the throat. What else can you notice about your breath? Where do you feel it in the body? What does it sound like? And if the mind has wandered, kindly invite it back. Leading your awareness back to the experience of breathing. The breath coming in and going out. Just like a wave in the ocean, a rise and fall. Nowhere else to be, nothing else to do. Just sit and breathe. And when we notice the wandering mind, we kindly bring ourselves back. Strengthening this pathway to presence. I now invite you to become aware of the sounds around you. Sounds far away. What is the most furthest sound that you can hear? What is a sound that may not be so far away? Maybe in the room. Becoming aware of the sound, my voice, or the sound of your own breath. Noticing how these sounds come in and move through your awareness, always changing, happening right now. Now I invite you to become aware of where your body may meet another surface. Maybe it's where your sit bones meet the couch, or your hands meet your legs. Becoming aware of the sensations in the body. These places of meeting, these edges. Or maybe you become aware of some tension somewhere in the shoulders or in the chest. We can invite breath here. We can invite the sense of letting go. You may notice in the body these subtle sensations, the tingling, vibration in the hands, feet. And we will now return to the breath, deepening the inhale to fill the lungs. And sighing out through the mouth. Letting go of any tension that may be left in the body. And gently introducing a wriggle of the toes, a wriggle of the fingers. Stretching of the neck if that's what you feel like. And in your own time, we'll open the eyes and come back into the Zoom room. Again, just taking notice of how your state of being may have shifted through that practice. Noticing if you're feeling a little bit calmer or maybe a little bit more sleepy, or even if you weren't able to connect with any of that and you might be feeling frustrated, just noticing what's there for you.
Cool. So as we mentioned earlier, our brain evolved for survival. And because of this, we've got this fight, flight, freeze response, which some of you may be familiar with. And that's the amygdala in our brain. And it's the emergency response. It fills us with adrenaline and cortisol in response to emergency situations. So it's there to keep us safe. And what it does is a part of our brain that allows us to feel stressed, anxious, angry, again, in response to emergency situations, as we try to protect ourselves, as we try to fight, flight, freeze. So we need this for survival. So back in the day, as we talked about being cave people, where we hunted for food. For example, say if a tiger was chasing you, you wanted the survival, this fight, flight, freeze to be there, ready to protect your body. So you see a tiger and you either fight, flight, freeze. I imagine you might run. So we've got this automatic survival response in our brain, and it's actually our default. It's easiest for us to use as humans. And what happens is, as our modern world has shifted and we're living in a completely different world to being cave people, and we don't actually need the survival part of our brain to be so strong anymore. We're not physically faced with as many threats as you were back when we were living in the wild. And what research and scientists are telling us is we're entering this fight, flight, freeze response around, it can be on average up to 8 times a day as humans. And it takes 60 to 90 minutes to come back to that pre-arousal state before our fight, flight, freeze has been triggered and that adrenaline and cortisol has been rushed through our body. So what happens when our fight, flight, freeze response is triggered is our heartbeat starts to increase. And this fast heartbeat sends blood going around the body and our breath becomes quicker as we get ready to fight, flight, freeze. This fast heartbeat then sends signals to all other energy spending processes and says, hey, shut down. I don't need you right now. I'm getting ready to, for example, I'm getting ready to run from a tiger. So the part of your brain that allows you to think properly, make decisions, connect, shuts down and gives way to your amygdala as you get ready to run from this tiger. Same as your digestive system as well. Hey, I don't need to digest food anymore. I'm getting ready to run. So that's why there's a lot to do with, the mind-gut connection, is because when this fight, flight, freeze is triggered, everything else is shutting down to protect us. And you can see how it's a really intelligent part of us, and it's a really special part of us to be able to protect our bodily selves. But we want to train our mind to know the difference. We're using this part of our brain like when we're late for work, stuck in traffic, anything that makes us feel stressed or anxious, we're responding really the same way as if a tiger is chasing us. And I know when I think about the global, like when I thought about last lockdown a year ago, I was thinking, well, this is a survival, like we're in this global pandemic and this is a danger, this is a real danger, and maybe like I'm supposed to be feeling like this. And it is really normal to be feeling like this, but our physical body is not being threatened. So what we want to do is try and train our brain to use a different part of our brain. So what happens is every time we meditate, so with the practice of meditation, what we're doing is we are noticing our mind's wanders and we bring it back. So with Ursi, we use the anchors, which was a breath or sound. We notice, we bring it back. That's that bicep curl for your brain, that bringing it back. Every time we do that, we're activating our prefrontal cortex. And I might get Ursi to bring up the brain so we could see that. So we're activating the prefrontal cortex. This is the front part of our brain that is to do with emotional awareness, connection, decision-making, rational thinking, personality. We're activating this part. So just like going to the gym and working out a muscle, this part is being stronger, getting stronger. And that's why mindfulness has become so big in our Western world, as scientists are proving it through scans of the brain. And what they're seeing is when we meditate, we're strengthening this prefrontal cortex, and it's actually visibly thicker. So we're thickening this prefrontal cortex. So pretty much the more we meditate, the more we practice noticing we've wandered and we bring it back, we're strengthening that. And I put simply, the prefrontal cortex can say to the amygdala, hey, I don't need you right now. This is not an emergency and I'm going to stay in control. And through meditation, what it does is when we feel stressed or anxious, we don't let it hijack us. We stay in control by using this prefrontal cortex at the front of the brain. So every time you notice, it's literally like bicep curl, working out that muscle, but working out your prefrontal cortex. which essentially, so that amygdala, that's the survival mode, and that's our default, the easiest to use. And the more we practice, so even if you just do 5 minutes of meditation, you'll, it's like going to the gym for 5 minutes, you're strengthening that prefrontal cortex and helping yourself stay in control. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Urs?
Yeah, I just want to say that this was a really pivotal learning for me, was this understanding that when I was practicing meditation, I wasn't just doing it to like make myself feel better. It was, oh, I'm actually strengthening a muscle, and I'm actually, you know, making changes every time that I meditate, and I'm strengthening this pathway into what I see to be the really good stuff. This prefrontal cortex being where like rational decision making, your emotional intelligence, your like personality, and this part of the brain was it's our most evolved part of our brain, and the amygdala is one of the oldest. Like that survival, fight, flight, freeze response is one of the oldest evolutions of in the brain, and the prefrontal cortex is the newest. So it's like essentially strengthening your more evolved brain. And every time that we sit and remember to come back to the present moment, we are strengthening that pathway. So that really changed the way that I thought about meditation.
And it comes back to neuroplasticity as well. So the more we have a thought, feeling, practice a habit, the stronger the pathway becomes. And you can think back to, say, when you learned to ride a bike, you know, it's difficult at first. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. And that's actually what we can do with our mind. We can actually work out and look after our mind the same way. Through working out that prefrontal cortex, it becomes easier for us to use. And that's a part of our brain that allows us to stay in the present and connect as well. And the amygdala, and they say on average is fully developed by the time you're age 15 to 16. And your prefrontal cortex doesn't fully develop until you're about 25. That's why, especially for teenagers, it's super hard to manage their emotions because they've got their fight, flight, freeze. It's fully active. It's so easy to feel stress, anxiety, and we don't have that part of our brain that helps calm ourselves down. So that's that prefrontal cortex, which we use for meditation. Yeah. So yeah, it's a really powerful tool. Even I know it's really hard to get into the habit of meditation, and it's something I've struggled with for a long time too. But just knowing that even if you could just do a couple of minutes, that's still that workout for the mind.
Cool. So during this pandemic, as we are, I don't know about you, but my flat, we've been going through a roller coaster of emotions. Sometimes we're like, there's been times where I've literally acted like I was 12 years old again with my flatmate. And I'm like, what is going on? We had a fight over a glass of water the other day. So yeah, frustrations are high. We're like sort of locked in these houses, and it's a unknown territory, and it is different from the last one, I think, because when it's not so new, we're sort of just expected to get on with it because now we've got the systems that are in place. We can work from home, you know, we've got Zoom, we all know how to use it. It's like, so we're just being expected to keep going, but actually it is as hard. And even looking over to Aussie and seeing all these other countries with Delta, and they've been in lockdown for so many months, you're like, your brain just goes to, how long are we going to be here for? And that thought can trigger fight, flight, freeze. So it's about like being aware when we're in these fight, flight, freeze responses, and being able to come back and have compassion for ourselves and care for ourselves. So in that moment where I didn't blow up, but I just got titchy at my flatmate about the glass of water, I just thought, I need to go away and care for myself because this is completely irrational. And the different techniques that we use are warmth. So maybe putting a blanket on, or sitting by the fire, or having a warm bath. Touch. So for me, I really like putting my hand on my heart, or I have putting one hand on my shoulder, just like letting myself know that everything's going to be okay. and the other one being gentle vocalization. So the way that I'm talking to myself. So if I am putting all these three things together, I would put a blanket around me, hug myself, and say to myself, Ursi, everything's going to be okay. This isn't going to last forever. You're doing really well, and this too shall pass. These are the sorts of things I say to myself. They're sort of like encouraging words, and everyone needs to hear different things. So you just want to give to yourself in those moments what you need. And one really important part of this is that noticing that you need it. So say, and this is where meditation and this sort of connect, is the meditation allows us to be aware of our thinking, because we're practicing, I'm noticing that I'm thinking, and I'm coming back. So we're noticing that our thinking is not necessarily who we are as a whole, and my reacting to the glass of water is not who I am. It was that I was stressed and frustrated in that moment, and I needed to care for myself in a way. So then I noticed that I need to care for myself, and I will go and do one of these tools. And everyone's different, and everyone has different tools that might help them as well. Like some people really like to go running, or go bike riding, or take a bath, or do a face mask, or listen to their favorite song. There are different ways to care for ourselves, and these tools that we're sharing with you today are just some that we've learned. You probably already have many in your life that you use. So do you want to talk more about the science behind the caregiver system, Shah? Just noticing also we've got 15 minutes to go.
Well, yeah, you've kind of explained a lot of it, but so as we talked about that survival, fight, flight, freeze, it's also, there's like one other name for it, and that's also called our reptilian brain. But luckily for us as humans is not only are we reptiles, but we're also mammals. So the idea being reptiles, when they're born, they're ready to be on the world on their own. However, we're also mammals, and we need a bit more like care and nurture before we're ready to be in the world on our own. So to facilitate this, we have a caregiver system in our mind. And what that is the idea being when a mammal is born, they have a longer developmental period to adapt to the environment. That means they need to stay close to their mother as they grow up, or as to a caregiver to grow up. So the caregiver system, we have this in our mind, and I'll get Ursi to bring up a slideshow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got the caregiver system is triggered by three things. So it's triggered by warmth, as Ursi said, gentle vocalizations, and touch. And when we do these three things, what happens is we actually release opiates and oxytocin, and they're all the feel-good chemicals in our body, and it uses our prefrontal cortex. So you can see there you've got the so we've looked at the threat system, that's what we talked about with the survival, and then we've also got the soothing system, which is pretty awesome because we've got this caregiver system that we can activate through warmth, gentle vocalizations, and touch, and it makes us feel good through these opiates and oxytocin. And although it's a caregiver system, we can actually care for ourselves, so we can actually do this for ourselves. So I think it's when I first learned that, just to actually be able to hug myself, I found, that's a bit strange. I don't really know how I feel about hugging myself. And then when I learned about the science behind and what actually happens in our brain, by doing that, you bring yourself into that prefrontal cortex, you produce opiates and oxytocin, and it feels really good. And I think because my brain, I always need the science behind it. So I was like, that does make sense. I do feel good after that. So what it actually does is when we do this, it generates a sense of safety that counteracts any of the threat caused by our amygdala, that threat defense system. So we're looking after ourselves and letting our brain know, hey, this is not an emergency, I'm not in danger, I'm going to stay in this prefrontal cortex. So although they're really simple tools, they're really powerful tools to look after ourselves. And when we say gentle vocalizations, that wording in our mind, so I guess all of us may be familiar with our inner critic, that self-talk that can be quite harsh to ourselves and say things. I know that I can say things to myself that I would never say to another person. So being way more conscious about using those kind words to ourselves, that also is bringing us into our prefrontal cortex and making us feel good and safe and protected. Yeah.
And all of this essentially is looking after ourselves so we can be in our lives without dumping on everyone else and being like reactive to other people and offending other people and or responding or reacting in a way that doesn't feel like our truest and most kind selves. So we're looking after ourselves so we can be there for other people and for our work, and also no one wants a boss that reacts and yells at you for something that's actually happening personally in their life, or they're just feeling like they're stressed or and they sort of blow up. It's about looking after ourselves so that we can not react in these ways that can be harmful to others. And also there are a lot of benefits in meditation and these self-care tools for our work as well. We can find more creativity, more productivity, because we're coming back into this present moment more often. And some people do see that, sports scientists and people that study, flow state or being in the zone when you are creatively brilliant and or you're really good at whatever you're doing. That is when you are totally present and not thinking about all these other things. So when we're totally present, we're able to be in the zone and actually be more creative and productive as well.
I just want to say that was Paul Gilbert's model for how humans manage emotions, managing it through 3 different ways, if you're wondering what that was.
Cool. Yes, so I would love to hear from anyone, whether you want to post it in the chat and or come off mute, how you may care for yourselves in this time of pandemic and being locked in our house, because we've never had to go through this before. So what have been some things for you that have helped you stay centered and stay calm? Sitting in the sunshine with a cup of tea, sitting in the sunshine. Great.
Hey, yes.
Hi, Helen.
Hello from Australia. Day 70 lockdown. I think a big one with self-care has been being kinder to myself around hours that I work in the day and being in state of flow around work rather than rigid around 9 to 5s, working when the energy state is there and discovering that productivity doesn't just exist between 9 to 6 when a boss may want that time to be. So I think being really compassionate to when other people are in state of flow, I guess, with what's going on at the moment has been a really big thing, especially getting past sort of day 30 or 40 of lockdown.
Yeah. And having employees as well, Helen, have you learned that, or how have you been able to be compassionate with them during this time, allowing them to have maybe their own creative times to work?
Yeah, I think Chloe and some of my staff are probably on this call too. So yeah, I think like just as a boss or as somebody who's in this situation of working and running a team or being in a team, whether or not you're just working alongside somebody or with other people, I think there's a lot to be said for just understanding. Like, I have had a couple of people just say, I'm having a shit day, or I need to go, spend a half day going for a walk, or I've got something else going on or whatever. And it's like just taking, the intensity of like what is important out of it's not important. Like, people's mental health at this point in time are more important than whatever that deliverable might be. And we certainly have, I certainly have noticed with clients and there has definitely been a massive massive heightening of emotions around what others are expecting and their reactions to very minor things that are happening, because everyone at this kind of point where you're a couple of months deep is titchy. So like you guys after 10 days and having a glass of water or whatever it is, you know, you've got to realize that that doesn't just come from your inner self being frustrated. It's like a supercharged connection of everybody is feeling like, ugh. So when somebody goes at you, you kind of just got to be like, cool, that was me like 5 minutes ago. So, you know, I understand you and your angry work text messages around whatever it is, because probably I've just done that 45 minutes before. So I think what Charlotte, you said with the front of the brain, so that's like, whoa, okay, the more you can bring yourself back to that, the more you can deal with those things. Because I reckon that at the moment, like, that's not happening for me 8 times a day. That's happening for me like 28 times a day. So that's quite terrifying, thinking that that's where you're living in.
Yeah. And knowing that meditation strengthens the pathway into the prefrontal cortex is like such an great takeaway from this workshop, if that's all that you take away. And the science with meditation, where the research is that it says that 6 to 8 weeks of daily practice thickens, they did MRIs, thickens the prefrontal cortex and actually can decrease the size of the amygdala, believe it or not. Your amygdala is never going to go away. You're never not going to run away from the tiger, but we can use this practice to thicken the prefrontal cortex and allow us to respond rather than react in those sorts of ways that can be detrimental to others.
I was going to say, the more you train it, the more you give yourself the choice of how you're going to react, because that survival mode, the amygdala, it is so easy for us to go down there. It's so easy to travel because it's what our brain evolved for, and it's what we've been using for so long. But the more you practice using that prefrontal cortex, you give yourself that choice to stay calm and connected. So for example, like when you're really angry, have you noticed that like it's really hard to think properly, to make decisions? It's like impossible to do all those things that the prefrontal cortex gives us. So the more we practice strengthening it and thickening it, then we're going to stay calmer and look after ourselves in those situations. Yeah,
cool. So I thought a really important thing that's keeping me quite calm at the moment, or somewhat positive, is to understand that this will pass, this time of lockdown, like remembering that one day we will be out again and socializing, and sort of holding that, rather than allowing yourself to feel sort of really bogged down by the weight of it. And there is a saying, the Zen master leader Thich Nhat Hanh has the saying about when there was this crowded Vietnamese refugee boat, and it was met with storms, met with pirates, and if everyone panicked on this boat, all would have been lost. They would have all died. But if even just one person on the boat remained calmed and centered, it was enough, and it showed the way for everyone else to survive. So there's a sense of, if you can simply, look after yourself and stay calm through this storm, then we give hope and we inspire others to do that as well. So I'm thinking we're going to close up in 5 minutes, and I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for coming along. I'll end with a meditation so we can end like with some calmness, and then I'll just close the chat. So you can stay in calmness if you'd like to. But just to remind you that Charlotte and I, we've just launched this company, Remind, and we do offer courses and workshops to support teams, organizations throughout this time of lockdown and beyond. We've facilitated 6-8-week courses, lunch and learn workshops. We've done 3-week courses, and also we have this online course coming up on the 7th of September, which you can actually pre-register for. We also have free meditation on our website that you can download and practice daily. And we have one on our Instagram as well. And there'll be more coming. So if you do want to get in touch with us, you can email us at begin@remind.nz. And we really hope we'll send out a PDF with these tools on it. We really hope that these have helped you. If you've taken away some sort of knowledge that you can look after yourself during this time, and self-care is really important. Shah, do you want to say anything? And then I'll just guide us through a little medi.
Yeah, I guess, thank you for coming online. And yeah, there was just a snippet of tools, and we'll send out the recording as well, of just to look after yourself, really, and knowing the power of the breath, how powerful such a simple thing that we do all the time, every day, what it can do to our bodies and calming ourselves down. And I guess as well, just knowing everything you're feeling is normal and real. So yeah, over to you, Urs, for the last.
Cool. Yeah, let's just take a few deep breaths together, 3 minutes of some stillness. And I also invite you to just have some practice of your own, to notice that you're thinking and guide yourself back. So we are doing this practicing of presence, breathing in through the nose, out through the nose, normal breathing here, letting the shoulders drop down and back. Maybe in this moment you want to invite in that gentle vocalization for yourself. Maybe you want to bring a hand to the heart or to the shoulder, to somewhere that feels caring for you. And just let yourself know that you are doing so well. And bring in those words of encouragement. Another powerful tool is that of gratitude. As we notice the things that we are grateful for. Saying to yourself a couple of things that you feel grateful for in this moment. Now I invite you to turn that care outwards to your community, your country or this world right now. Sending some positive words, some positive affirmations for the world. What do we need? What do we all need to hear? Thank you so much for being here and coming along to this workshop. You can stay in this stillness. I'll close down the Zoom link. Thank you so much.